On May 5, 1998, in Las Vegas, Nevada, 18-year-old Lesly Palacio disappeared. That evening, she went to meet an old childhood friend whom her entire family trusted. Why do they blindly trust him so much? After all, even the closest people can change over the years. However, the next day the girl did not return home, and there was no news from her friend either. Lesly's loved ones became worried because they had no idea that this boy, who seemed so reliable, could be involved in her disappearance. Lesly was the second of 5 daughters of Lesly Palacio from a family of Puerto Rican immigrants. Although she wasn't formally the eldest, she took on the role of big sister in the family. Her mother worked all day in a house cleaning service, so Lesly had to do a lot on her own. She looked after her younger sisters, made sure they did everything properly, cooked for them and provided for all their needs while their mother was not at home. I feel sorry for the girl. An overwhelming burden of household worries fell on her young shoulders. But why was she so trusting? Before her disappearance, Lesly Palacio's life seemed quite typical and well off for a girl of her age and background. But one day it changed dramatically that fateful night in May 1998 when she went to meet her friend and never returned. I wonder what really happened. Was this friend really involved in her disappearance? The details of this story have yet to be clarified. When Lesly Palacio grew up, she got a job to financially support her family. After working for some time, the girl enrolled in a local university to study to be a laboratory technician. She always insisted that her younger sisters also pursue higher education and strive for a better life. It's clear that Lesly had ambitious plans to escape poverty and provide a decent future for her loved ones. Lesly wanted her mother Lesly to stop her exhausting work in the cleaning service, so she suggested opening their own cleaning company. Because Lesly had many years of experience and a reputation as a diligent worker in this field. Undoubtedly, the earnings of the self-employed are often higher than those of hired workers. Her mother agreed with her daughter's idea, and in August 2020, the newly created company, Palacio Cleaning Service, received its first big contract. The family was over the moon with joy, hoping that this would be the beginning of a more prosperous and freer life. However, often such euphoric enthusiasm turns out to be a shaky illusion. Lesly actively joined the new family business, despite her studies and other work. She closely monitored that everything went properly in their cleaning company. However, this bright idyll lasted a very short time. It's alarming how quickly their joyful dreams and ambitious plans for the future were cut short. Friends, I beg you to subscribe to the channel, like this video and leave any comment under it about what mistakes I could have made, because I want to make better videos and I need your feedback. Therefore, become sponsors. I will be endlessly grateful to you. On Saturday, August 28, 2020, 22-year-old Lesly Palacio went to meet with 25-year-old Erick Rangel Ibarra. This guy was by no means a stranger to her. They practically grew up together with Lesly as relatives. The Palacio and Rangel families maintained very close, friendly relations. Guadalupe, Erick's mother, was even Lesly's godmother. Lesly and Guadalupe used to be family friends, although recently they had drifted apart a bit due to work and worries. Since childhood and adolescence, Lesly and Erick were inseparable. They attended various celebrations together, celebrated holidays like brother and sister. But who could have foreseen that this long-standing friendship, seemingly as close as blood, would suddenly turn into such a terrible tragedy? On that fateful Saturday night, Lesly initially did not plan to see Erick. She intended to meet with her older sister Kelly and friends. However, they left earlier, and when Lesly contacted them, they were already very far from her house. The girl did not want to go so far alone. So Lesly decided to meet with her old, supposedly reliable friend Erick Rangel Ibarra. After all, who could have predicted that this chance-friendly meeting with a former close acquaintance would turn into such a terrible misfortune? Innocent trust often turns out to be a fatal trap. This sad case bitterly reminds us that even an old, sincere friendship can suddenly spill out in black betrayal in the most unexpected way. Before setting off for the meeting, Lesly consulted her mother Lesly. She told her not to go anywhere if the girl didn't want to. However, Lesly later decided to contact Erick Rangel Ibarra. According to her younger sister, that evening they were actively texting with Erick and talking via video call. I wonder what exactly he told her that made Lesly change her mind at first. Eventually, around midnight on Saturday, August 28, Lesly went to meet Erick. The guy picked her up from home. According to the messages that Lesly sent to her older sister Kelly, she and Erick visited a casino, and for some time everything seemed quite normal. Nothing unusual was happening. However, then there was no news from Lesly for some time. Suddenly at 4 a.m., Kelly received a strange message from her. Lesly simply wrote "need to" and that she needed to tell something important. Kelly asked what had happened, but her sister no longer responded to any requests. The sister waited in vain for explanations for about an hour, and when at 5:40 a.m. she tried to call Lesly, her phone turned out to be switched off. Such an abrupt break in contact on the night of August 29 was an extremely alarming signal. After all, a few hours before, everything seemed completely safe and normal during her meeting with her old friend Erick. What could have changed so radically in such a short period of time? Could this seemingly close childhood acquaintance be involved in Lesly's disappearance that fateful night? These questions worried the girl's family. At first, older sister Kelly was not too worried when Lesly stopped getting in touch after the strange message at 4 a.m. After all, her younger sister was with Erick Rangel Ibarra, a longtime childhood friend whom the entire Palacio family trusted unconditionally. However, was this blind trust in a person they didn't really know justified? Kelly thought that Lesly had simply turned off or run out of charge on her phone, so she decided not to disturb their mother when she was still sleeping. The next morning, around 11 a.m. on Sunday, Kelly started sending messages to Lesly again, but her sister still didn't answer. It was a day off, so the whole Palacio family woke up later than usual. When Mother Lesly went to wake up her daughters, she found that Lesly was not in her room. After asking the other daughters where their sister was, the mother found out that Lesly had been with Erick. Lesly immediately called the Rangel Ibarra family, but no one answered the calls. This was already extremely suspicious and alarming. Hours passed, Lesly's phone remained turned off, and Erick's relatives seemed to have disappeared into nowhere, ignoring the calls of the worried Palacio mother. Lesly and her daughters began to get very nervous. The situation was becoming more threatening with each minute of silence. There was no news from Lesly after her last message around 4 a.m. And now Erick himself had disappeared along with his relatives, not responding to calls. An unusual, oppressive silence descended after that fateful Saturday night. Could something have happened to the girl during the meeting with a supposedly reliable old friend? Could he have been accidentally or intentionally involved in her disappearance? These terrible suspicions tormented Lesly's frightened family. The Palacio family was considering filing a missing person report with the police about Lesly. However, they decided to wait a bit. Finally, Guadalupe Rangel Ibarra, Erick's mother, responded to the calls. Talking with Lesly's mother, Lesly, she said that she did not know where her son was, and she did not seem to care much, since Erick was already an adult and she did not interfere in his affairs. Guadalupe advised Lesly to just wait until the kids showed up at home on their own. Guadalupe's cynically indifferent tone extremely worried and alarmed the Palacio family. Under normal circumstances, a mother should be concerned if she does not know where her son is and where the girl who was almost like a relative to her has disappeared. Guadalupe's reaction seemed completely abnormal and unnatural. Such demonstrative detachment instead of obvious concern and desire to help find Lesly immediately aroused suspicion. During the first few hours of the Palacio family's failed attempts to reach the Rangels Ibarra, they ignored all calls, and when someone from the Palacios came personally and knocked on their door, despite obvious signs of people's presence in the house, no one opened the door for them. Such deliberate detachment and unwillingness to contact instead of basic concern and cooperation in finding out the fate of the missing girl raised serious suspicions. After all, Erick was not just a casual acquaintance of Lesly's, he was a close family member with whom they had always had a warm relationship. This behavior of the Rangel Ibarra family in the situation with Lesly's disappearance looked truly threatening and creepy. When Lesly's alarmed family began calling other relatives of Erick Rangel Ibarra, one of his sisters finally made contact. Unlike Erick's mother Guadalupe, this sister communicated quite openly with the missing Lesly's family. She described Erick's car to them, gave them his phone number, and told them where he most often liked to go to relax. Armed with this information, Lesly's family continued an active independent search for the missing girl. The Palacios also persistently informed the Rangel Ibarra family that they would soon file an official missing person report with the police about Lesly. They suggested that Erick's parents do the same, report the disappearance of their own son. However, they flatly refused to do so. Guadalupe, Erick's mother, categorically stated that she would not file any missing person report about him. When the Palacio family eventually did file a missing person report with the Nevada police about 22-year-old Lesly, they were told that an official search would not begin until 72 hours had passed. They said that Lesly, who was 22, could well have run away somewhere with her 25-year-old friend Erick. with whom she had a romantic relationship. The Palacio family was outraged by such an absurd and frivolous framing of the issue. After all, in reality there had never been anything between Lesly and Erick except purely friendly relations, which everyone knew well. It was becoming increasingly creepy that everyone from Erick's mother to law enforcement, instead of urgently actively searching for the girl, pretended that nothing terrible had happened. Why did everyone around them contemptuously ignore the disappearance of 22-year-old Lesly Palacio while surrounded by supposedly close and trusted people? The Palacio family categorically disagreed with the police version about a possible escape of Lesly with her 25-year-old friend Erick. The 22-year-old girl had always been very responsible. She had a job, studies, she participated in the family business. Lesly never missed classes and always came home on time. So her sudden unknown escape looked extremely inappropriate and strange. Not receiving proper help from law enforcement, Lesly's family was forced to begin an independent search for the missing girl. They printed posters with information about the disappearance and photos of Lesly, hung them in the area of the casino where she was on the night of her disappearance, as well as near their home and the home of the Rangels Ibarra. Messages about Lesly's disappearance were posted on social networks. Her photos were distributed everywhere. Gradually, more and more people learned about this disappearance and shared information. However, the Palacio family also received a lot of inaccurate, false information. They were even sent a demand to pay $10,000 for Lesly's return via Instagram. The family immediately notified the police about this, and only after the incident with the ransom demand did the police begin to treat the disappearance of 22-year-old Lesly Palacio more seriously and responsibly. Initially, law enforcement agencies showed a dismissive inattention to this critical situation with the disappearance of a young girl among close people. The Palacio family tried to find out where the message with the demand to pay a ransom for Lesly's return came from, but their attempts did not bring any results. It became obvious that these were just heartless and cruel people who cynically played with the feelings of the grieving family, and at the same time hoped to profit by demanding money. However, it was thanks to this episode with the ransom demand that the police were finally forced to begin an active search for the missing Lesly and Erick. At first, Erick Rangel Ibarra himself was considered missing, since his relatives did not officially report it. However, law enforcement officers tried to find the young man at work or among friends in order to interrogate him about the events of that fateful night when he was with Lesly. On September 1, 2020, 3 days after the girl's disappearance, the police reported extremely alarming information at a press conference. It turned out that along with Erick, his 45-year-old father Jose Rangel had also disappeared without a trace. This situation seemed extremely suspicious and strange. Several neighbors of the Rangel family claimed that they had recently noticed some unusual, suspicious behavior on the part of members of this family. The circumstances surrounding the disappearance of Lesly, Erick himself and his father were becoming increasingly threatening and creepy. At that press conference, the police also reported that for several days after Lesly's disappearance, her mother Guadalupe and Erick's 2 sisters were actively carrying things out of their house. At first, the neighbors thought that the family just wanted to get rid of old things or sell them. But it looked as if the Rangels were going to move out of the house. Boxes of things were being taken out by whole truckloads. Strange behavior for people whose close relative has just disappeared. Wouldn't it be more logical to stay at home in case she returns? Neighbors also noticed that during those days, the family was rarely seen in their area, and their habits became strange in general. For example, they left the house late at night or early in the morning, which was unusual for them. In addition, according to neighbors, during the few days after Lesly's disappearance, they only saw Guadalupe and Erick's 2 sisters. No one saw Erick himself or his father Jose. The police, of course, also found this suspicious behavior of the missing girl's close ones strange. They tried to call Guadalupe and Erick's sisters and demanded that they provide testimony, but they refused to do so. After all, they were not officially suspected of anything, and if there were no grounds for suspicion, it seemed strange that Erick's relatives, having such a close relationship with the Palacio family, did not want to help them and provide at least some information to search for Lesly. Even less did they seek to find out where their missing relative Erick was, although they had not known where he was for several days now. It would be logical to expect concern from them, but this was not observed. The only one who, after much persuasion from the police, agreed to testify was the same sister of Erick who initially provided some details to Lesly's family. She said that on August 29, the day the girl disappeared, she saw her brother return home very upset. Erick then took some of his things and said that he was going somewhere with his father. but did not specify where exactly. This made the police suspect that Erick might have had something to hide. A very important piece of evidence in the case was the video recording from the surveillance cameras near the casino that Lesly and Erick visited. The footage shows that they arrived there quite late, around 12:30 a.m. In the frames, the young people behaved calmly, talked. Nothing indicated any unusual or threatening situation. They treated each other warmly, in a friendly manner. Erick did not treat Lesly badly in any way, and the girl also did not look like she was under the influence of substances or alcohol. It is unknown what exactly could have happened after they left the casino in Erick's car around 2 a.m. These were the last frames with Lesly alive that became publicly available. Having received this recording, the police could officially state, Erick Rangel was the last person who saw the girl alive that night. Arrest warrants were issued for him and his father, Jose Rangel. However, the suspicious individuals tried by all means to avoid responsibility and arrest. Next, the police began to find out the location of Erick's phones, and here strange facts were revealed. It turned out that he had not one, but several mobile numbers at once. Moreover, some phones were disposable, without SIM cards. After studying the history of their balance refills, the police came to the conclusion that Erick could probably be involved in some dubious illegal transactions, possibly related to human trafficking or prohibited substances. One of Erick's disposable phones was turned on August 29, the same day Lesly was last seen alive. The signal came from Bahia del Fuego National Park, 75 km from that casino. From there, Erick called his friend and talked to him for a few minutes. The police interrogated this friend, and he confirmed that on that night, Erick did indeed call him and asked him to come to the park and bring a canister of gasoline. When asked what for, the young man answered something like, "I took someone's life." However, whether the friend really helped Erick and went to the park is unknown. He claimed that his phone did not leave his own house that day. After the police released some of the details of this case, even more people were involved in its investigation. Law enforcement asked city residents to send any photos or videos where Erick or his father Jose could have accidentally got into the frame, in case someone saw them. Although the police tried to act as quickly as possible, cooperation with the Palacio family was not very productive. According to Lesly's sisters, they learned the news only from the same sources as the rest of the public at the same time. The girls' relatives believed that they should have been informed as a priority, and also that details that did not make it into the media should have been shared with them. Therefore, the Palacio family had little trust in the police, believing that they were not doing everything possible to investigate. This became especially noticeable when information about another video recording from the surveillance camera of the Rangel's neighbor appeared in the media. I wonder what exactly was recorded there and why the police tried to hide these frames. The video itself was never made public, and the police refused to comment in detail on its content. The only information known is that the recording shows Lesly and Erick returning home around 5-6 a.m. The girl was already tipsy, staggering, and Erick also looked similar to being drunk. At 6:30 they entered the house. Later, Erick himself came out of their strip to the waist, got into the car, and half an hour later returned with a man who looked like his father. They both entered the house, and 20 minutes later they came out again, holding the motionless body of a girl, probably Lesly, in their arms. The man loaded her into the car, but she did not move. Some police officers suggested that at that moment Lesly was already dead. This shocking video was not made public for moral reasons, so as not to traumatize the family of the deceased, but some details got into the media. According to the police, such a publication was intended to increase public vigilance to search for Erick and his father. Although the girl's body has not yet been found, the case was classified as murder. More than a week after the disappearance, on September 11, 2020, Lesly Palacio's body was found near Bahia del Fuego National Park. This was the last recorded place from which the signal from one of Erick Rangel's phones came. After such a find, Erick began to be suspected even more of involvement in the crime. If at first he was one of the possible suspects, now he has turned into the main person involved in the case. The results of the forensic medical examination of Lesly's body were not officially disclosed. It is not known what exactly was the cause of her death and what traces were found on the body. The only information that leaked to the media came from one of the girl's relatives. He said that Lesly's body was identified by DNA, as it was burned. Erick probably burned the body to hide the evidence, but this version has no official confirmation. During a search of the Rangel house, traces of human blood were found in Erick's room. However, the police decided not to disclose whether additional examinations were carried out to determine whether this blood belonged to Lesly. The day after the discovery of the girl's body, Erick's car was found abandoned in a parking lot in California. On the same day, the young man's mother and 2 sisters disappeared without a trace from the house, taking all their things with them. They stopped responding to any calls and messages, not only from the Palacio family or the police, but also from all acquaintances. According to the results of the investigation, Erick and his father Jose Rangel were hiding in Mexico. The police came to this conclusion based on the testimony of their friends and relatives from California. Having found Erick's car in this state, law enforcement officers interviewed some of his acquaintances there. They said that after the disappearance, Erick and his father asked them for help in crossing the Mexican border. However, due to possible problems with the law, none of the friends or relatives dared to help them. Allegedly, friends and relatives of Erick and Jose Rangel refused to help them cross the border into Mexico due to possible problems with the law. However, it is not known what was really happening during those days. The police managed to locate Erick's iPad. It turned out to be in Mexico. However, law enforcement officers were criticized for not specifying in which region of Mexico the signal from this gadget was recorded. After all, Mexico is a large country, and such a clarification would help narrow the search area. At one of the press conferences, police representatives only announced that 2 men had probably fled to Mexico. Of course, Lesly's family believed that the police were doing a poor job. At the university and among the neighbors, touching events were held to say goodbye to the deceased girl, who was a very important and caring person for her environment. Everyone again urged the authorities to find and catch Erick and his father and close this case as soon as possible. However, days passed for weeks, and there was less and less information about the whereabouts of the Rangels. They seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth. Lesly's family continued to insist that the police find them, but in 2021 there were still no answers. Finally, on February 12, 2021, the police announced a very important news. On January 19, 2021, Jose Rangel was arrested in the city of San Diego, California. On January 31, he was transferred to a prison in Nevada. The man was charged with a number of charges, including concealing a crime and destroying evidence. It is currently unknown whether the police interrogated him and asked about the whereabouts of his son Erick. The only thing that is known is that 25-year-old Erick Rangel Ibarra is still hiding from the authorities, probably in Mexico, although the police do not know exactly where and with whom he may be. The police believe that his arrested father will not give out his son's whereabouts. Other family members also refuse to cooperate. Erick's mother and sisters are not involved in the trial, so they cannot be interrogated without consent. Erick Rangel Ibarra has no striking features, neither noticeable tattoos, nor other special signs that would help to recognize him. And in times of a pandemic, when everyone wears masks, his face becomes completely inconspicuous. So Erick manages to remain unnoticed and hide in an unknown place. This case has become extremely confusing and controversial, not only because of the police's initial refusal to cooperate with Lesly's family. A lot of key information, in particular about the location of Erick himself, was hidden by law enforcement from the public. Because of this, there were many unofficial guesses and versions of the event. In particular, due to the number of phones Erick had and Lesly's last message that she needs to tell something, there is a widespread opinion that the girl learned about Erick or his family's involvement in human trafficking or drug trafficking. He probably wanted to involve her in the criminal business as well, but after her refusal and threats to go to the police, he got rid of Lesly to hide the illegal activity. Another version is that Erick demanded intimacy from Lesly, but became enraged by her refusal and killed the girl. However, without official conclusions from the examination, it is impossible to say for certain what happened and whether Lesly suffered physical violence. The main thing is that now Erick Rangel Ibarra is hiding and is actively wanted on suspicion of murder. His father is already behind bars. Erick himself is probably hiding in Mexico, although he could have intentionally sent his tablet there to confuse the trail. And the friends and relatives who testified to the police could have simply told lies. This case has many blank spots and contradictions, but the most terrible thing is that Erick Rangel, who is suspected of murder, is still at large and avoids justice. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for watching to the end. Perhaps you will like my next videos. I love you and I'm not saying goodbye.